Happy Friday, everyone. On today's Locked On NHL, the Dallas Stars are still alive in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Stanley Cup Final schedule has some options, plus what's going on with Kyle Dubas these days, and a look ahead to the medal rounds for men's worlds.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, once again. Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On NHL. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders, and you can find him on Twitter at IceWarsNYRBSNYI. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube or on Sirius XM. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. If you enter the promo code LockedOnNHL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. How's it going this Friday, Gil?
It is going well. We are very close to knowing who's in the Stanley Cup Final, and it's a holiday weekend here in the United States. So lots going on, very excited, and just looking forward to knowing who the final two teams are going to be.
Yeah, it should be some excellent weather where we live for the holiday weekend. So looking forward to getting some sunshine. The Stars shone last night in Dallas, staving elimination against the Vegas Golden Knights, winning in overtime 3-2 on a Pavelski winner. And this was, not a foregone conclusion here. Dallas had to come back multiple times in this game.
Yeah, down 1-0, down 2-1, and getting the game winner on an overtime power play goal. Kind of fitting that it was Joe Pavelski too to get the goal. He's been great all playoff long, and he's sort of the sentimental favorite on this Stars roster, where he's a great veteran who never won a Stanley Cup but came close so many times. And for him to sort of put the finishing touches on this game and get the game-winning goal, it just seemed fitting. He's saying, I'm not ready to let go of this dream just yet.
Absolutely. And the whole overtime penalty situation, I was just looking at Braden McNabb sitting in the box going, what must he be thinking right now? They could have had a much better shot at finishing off the Dallas Stars in a sweep. But, I think Vegas played pretty decently in this game. Like, I think that maybe it wasn't their best game of the series overall, but they were certainly in it, obviously, by having multiple leads. What do you think, ultimately went right for the Stars or wrong for Vegas here?
Well, I think there was a little more desperation from Dallas, but I think the other thing is special teams made a big difference.
Yeah.
There were only 3 penalties in this game, 2 against Vegas, 1 against Dallas. Dallas cashed in on both power play opportunities. And, when you win 3-2 and 2 of your goals are on the power play, that's the difference right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other big difference in this game, Jason Robertson. So
Oh, yeah.
his 2 goals were his 5th and 6th of the playoffs, which, in the third round, you would think he would have had a lot more on the board by this point. But, I think that's been one of the issues with Dallas and their lack of overall consistency in these playoffs. I mean, they've gotten to this point, but at the same time, they've needed Jason Robertson to step up a little bit. And, if it took an elimination game in the conference finals for him to do it, I mean, it's, a little overdue though.
A little overdue. And how about that? 11 shots on goal in this game by Jason Robertson. I mean, Jack Eichel had 7 for Vegas, but 11 shots in one game. and getting, 2 goals in this contest. They needed a lot more from Jason Robertson, and last night they got
Yeah, he was not going quietly into that good night,
it.
as they say. I think the other big factor in this game was the absence of Ben, the captain, because of the suspension. And this was game one of a 2-game suspension. So the fact that the Stars have given themselves another chance in game 5 of this series, they've got to do it again without Ben in the lineup.
Yeah, and that's going to be tough. But look, I can't argue with the suspension. I think it was the right call. And, to have to now go on the road and do that is going to be even tougher for the Dallas Stars. But hey, you take these, you got to win 4 in a row, but you really got to win 1 in a row 4 times. You take them one at a time, 1 down, 1 more to come on Saturday.
Yeah, it's so cliche. And Joe Pavelski was being interviewed. I think it was Emily Kaplan on ESPN after the game, and he pretty much said that in talking to her. And I think that for the Stars, to me, the confidence comes from the fact that they were able to end the game quickly in overtime, that it didn't drag on. In the back of my head, I was like, I would like this done in the next 10 minutes, please. And they obliged, but whoever won, because I have no horse in this race per se. But I think that element of it, of how quickly the Stars were able to capitalize on that power play. I thought their puck movement was excellent on it,
Yeah.
especially the play that led to the goal. So it just felt like there was this extra burst of determination from the Stars, especially on that particular power play.
The urgency was there. And, when you're facing elimination, you need to have that urgency there. And look, the Stars got this far the hard way. They weren't the team that was sweeping their opponents. They battled in each and every series, and now, down 3-0. It's a tough task. It was good to see them answer that challenge. And now it gets tougher when you have to switch it over to Vegas and do it on the road. But, they've got to just dig in and keep that attitude going.
Yeah, you have to wonder, just that extra motivation of wanting to get back home to the home fans one more time. Like, can that power them through on the road on Saturday?
Yeah, and then you figure if you get that game 6 at home, if you can win that, the old adage is anything can happen in a game 7. So yeah, it won't be easy. It will be look, Vegas is a very good team, and I got to say this, even in defeat, I mean, Aiden Hill continues to play very, very well. I mean, 39 saves in 42 shots. He's got Jake Ottinger, who's considered one of the better goalies in the league, playing opposite him, and Aiden Hill matched him save for save throughout this game.
Yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights goaltending obviously has been a big narrative over the whole course of the season, as well as these playoffs, and the fact that they've had 5 different goaltenders over the course of the season, and even some rotation in the playoffs. The fact that Aiden Hill, of all people, is the guy stepping up at this point, and you're right, making those saves. I think that his positioning is really spot on, especially when they're facing some of the offensive threats that Dallas has and the kind of rushes that Dallas puts together. Really impressed with what Aiden Hill has been doing.
Yeah, he has stepped up, and certainly, obviously, it's going to be important for him next year to prove that this was not just a hot streak, that this is what he's capable of doing on a regular basis. But boy, oh boy, has he made a name for himself during this playoff run.
I know, and you have to think in the back of your head, should Vegas win this, and the statistics would say that they are going to move forward, to see Aiden Hill going up against Sergei Bobrovsky in a Stanley Cup final. It feels like a little David and Goliath, except where David, has had a rough patch that he has gone through.
Yeah, it certainly that would make for a very interesting contrast and story if we do indeed get that matchup.
Yeah, I think so as well. All right. Well, we have so much more to talk about on today's show. We've got some question marks with Kyle Dubas and his agent, as well as some schedule options for the Stanley Cup Final coming up next.
But first, today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Attention, active individuals. Are you tired of sacrificing comfort for style when it comes to your activewear? Introducing Bird Dogs, the game changer in athletic shorts. They are premium shorts designed for maximum performance combined with unparalleled comfort. With their unique built in liner, these shorts offer ultimate support and flexibility, ensuring you stay comfortable even during the most intense workouts. And here's the best part: Bird Dogs are more than just workout gear. They're versatile enough to take with you from the gym to the street without skipping a beat. Bird Dogs are made with premium breathable fabric that keeps you cool throughout your workout activities. Order your pair of Bird Dogs today and join the thousands of satisfied customers who have made the switch. Visit birddogs.com/lockedonnhl and enter promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. Bird Dogs, where style meets comfort and performance meets perfection. Get yours now and unleash your true potential.
All right, Gil. Before we dig into the multiple options for the Stanley Cup final, I still can't believe we're saying those words at this point. Season's almost over, man.
Yeah.
Um, Kyle Dubas has had a little bit of a rough landing since being let go or mutually parting ways with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it feels like the narrative of, once somebody leaves Toronto, then, the feeding frenzy begins in terms of, going after the person or saying negative things about the player. Now, Kyle Dubas, the former GM there. And it seems like that is on schedule for him right now.
Yeah.
And, the hits keep coming. The Players Association is apparently reviewing the dealings with Kyle Dubas and his agent from the Wasserman agency for a theoretical violation of the certified agent regulations that they deal with, because his agent works for the same agency that represents Austin Matthews on the team. Now, it's a different division and a different agent, but it's within the same umbrella agency. And apparently that's a no-go in the regulations of the NHLPA. But the regulations only apply to certified agents that are registered with the PA. And this guy that's Dubas's agent is in a different division and is not certified. So do those rules apply to him? And what does that mean for potential future employment in the league for Kyle Dubas?
Yeah. This is a gray area. It's one of those things that you can't just look at it and say, okay, that's the answer, and close the book. Uh, it is important, I think, for the league to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest. I'm not saying there is or isn't one in this case, but you can't even have it look like there could be. So
Right.
I get the feeling, there will be some kind of a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine, but that this will sort of eventually be worked out without any major damage to Kyle Dubas's future employment plans or ability. But you can't have a situation where there is even the appearance of a conflict between someone representing a GM and somebody representing a player.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And I see them maybe clarifying those regulations on the
Yes,
PA side of things, just to make sure, that it's abundantly clear what the rules are. Because, as the rules are, it's the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law here,
right.
right? That I don't think any rules were broken in the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law says otherwise. And so I don't know if they can enforce a fine, but they could maybe say, don't do that again.
Right, right. Some kind of a slap on the wrist or reprimand, and then
Yeah.
it has to pass the smell test, as they say. And like you said, it may not have violated the letter of the law, but it just doesn't look or smell right. And so something has to be clarified. And I don't think this is a major problem for the league at this moment, but the key is to prevent it from happening in the future where it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see what happens in the continuing carousel that is the open coaching and GM positions in the league. And you'll hear all about any hires that happen on Locked On NHL in the coming weeks. Also, in the coming weeks, the Stanley Cup Final. And the NHL was actually really gracious. And I don't say that very often, but um, in terms of creating two alternate schedules for the Stanley Cup Final relative to if Vegas wins game 5 and closes out the series, or if Dallas wins game 5 and that series goes to 6 or 7 games. And so in the Vegas wins game 5 scenario, the Stanley Cup Final begins on Wednesday, which is not as many days, but I think the perfect amount of days for a break between to give Vegas the chance to rest and heal up, and for people to travel and the media setup and all of that has to happen to get to Vegas to make it happen on time. Now, the game 5 is in Vegas, and the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup Final would also be in Vegas in that scenario. Some of that is mitigated, but the entirety, at least in the US, the entirety of the Stanley Cup Finals will be broadcast on TNT. And so it's a different broadcast group than was game 4, which is ESPN. So
Right.
there's lots of logistics going on here. And the other scenario has the Stanley Cup Final not beginning until a week from tomorrow on
Yeah.
Saturday, June 3rd. That is a long time, not only for us to wait, for the Florida Panthers to wait.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, they would be off for more than a week, maybe a week and a half in between games. Certainly that could kill momentum. And then, even under the scenario where Vegas wins game 5, you have a Wednesday game 1 and then a Saturday game 2, which means that Florida will have played one game in about 10 or 11 days. So, both scenarios, Florida's sweep, it gives them time to heal, but it may also disrupt some of the momentum that they built up in the way they handled their conference final series against the Hurricanes.
Yeah, momentum is huge in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And having that much time off, like the dedication it takes to stay focused and, getting extra practices in can help. But at the same time, it's just like all of these guys in Florida are itching to play another game. Like they don't care who it's against in the
Right.
final. The fans may have their opinions about that, but the players themselves don't care. So
Just drop the puck.
just drop the puck and let me go. So I think that it's going to be a significant challenge for both teams, regardless of who they are, given this schedule, because the latter schedule, even though it doesn't start until the third, the spacing of the games is a little bit better, I
Yes.
think, overall, because the latter games follow the same timeline. It's really just the first 2 or 3 games that are different depending on that schedule. But like once you hit June 8th, it pretty much goes, in the same date order. So, I think that for fans, obviously, we don't want that much time off from hockey.
Exactly.
In these latter parts of the season. I think it's remarkable given, all the schedule changes we've had over the last several years, due to the pandemic and everything. To have a Stanley Cup Final start in May sounds incredible. But yeah, just what else are you thinking about these schedule options?
I prefer from a purely fan standpoint, I prefer the if Vegas wins game 5 schedule. I think it just sort of is a little I don't know. I don't like that big gap in between games, but at the same time, once it gets started, I like the other schedule better. So whatever it is, it's going to be. I'm just looking forward to a really good Stanley Cup final. How about you?
Yeah, the same. And it is interesting because according to the NHL schedule, the puck drop, or at least the start of the broadcast, will be at 8 p.m. Eastern, regardless.
Right.
Uh, and even with the games in Vegas, so that's also an interesting factor in terms of start times in Vegas, and we'll see if that has an effect as well. The the games should be good regardless. Very
Yeah.
much looking forward to them. Coming up next, we will talk a little bit more about the Florida Panthers, just sitting and waiting, and what should they be doing, and what does it look like against either of these teams. Plus, men's worlds are in their medal rounds this weekend. So if you're itching to watch some more hockey, we will talk about that next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs. Right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. And man, the Nuggets sweeping to get into the final. Boston is clawing their way back into it. I might bet on Boston for that next win to tie things up, but we'll see how the Celtics do. The best parts about betting on FanDuel are that they have great promotions every day. It's a safe and secure app. You get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on all the playoff action, whether it's NBA or NHL. It's America's number one sports book. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Gil. So if you're the Florida Panthers, like, what are you doing now?
Trying to heal a little bit from whatever bumps and bruises I have. And believe me, at this point, after playing 100 games, give or take, every player is run down physically. So trying to recover physically and trying to stay mentally sharp, really. And maybe taking a little peek at each game and getting to know both teams and their style and starting to prepare mentally for what is, look, first time since what, 1996 that the Panthers are in the Cup final. So, this is not an everyday occurrence, but it's exciting. And, I'm trying to stay mentally sharp and get physically recovered. What about you?
Yeah,
What do you think?
watching a lot of tape. I think they might be watching a lot of Aiden Hill tape
Yeah.
in terms of trying to figure him out because, he's not somebody that the Panthers are super familiar with right now. And so I think that that's going to be a big part of it, assuming that Vegas can indeed win this series at some point. But yeah, I think we talked about it in the last segment. The delay with the schedule is going to be a big challenge for them. But it feels like this is a team with some destiny around it, just given everything with the way that, the butterfly effect of that last game of the regular
Yeah.
season with just barely scraping into the playoffs and then just performing this way and taking down the Boston Bruins. It almost seems like years ago now that we were talking about the Bruins as a de facto top team in this playoffs, and the Florida Panthers have turned that narrative on its head. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they do in the Stanley Cup Finals for that series. And of course, we have the Dallas Vegas game tomorrow night. Should it go to game 6 back in Dallas, that will be on Monday, and a game 7 would be next Wednesday. So next Wednesday is either going to be a game 7 or game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I will take either option.
Yeah. No, as long as there's hockey, right? I mean, that's bottom line.
Yes. Well, speaking of more hockey, the Men's Worlds Tournament is continuing in Europe right now. And, as somebody who doesn't normally watch Men's Worlds because it's kind of up in the air in terms of who goes over there. Right now, most of the top Canadian players like opted out of the tournament. So it's a bit of, an unknown factor, but it is still some pretty fun hockey. I've been watching a lot more of it this year than I have in past years, mostly because Flyers prospect Cutter Gauthier is on Team USA.
Right.
So it's a bit of a scouting job for me. But man, getting to these quarterfinals has been a lot of fun. The aforementioned Team USA will be in the semifinals versus Germany on Saturday. USA is the only undefeated team. They beat Czechia in the quarterfinals. Germany beat Switzerland in their quarterfinals. That was a huge upset for them, and it was a really fun game to watch. The other semifinal will be Canada versus Latvia. Latvia has been the story of men's worlds this year, having home ice advantage for a portion of the tournament, taking place in their home country. They upset Sweden in the quarterfinals, who had been the other top team in the tournament, to USA. And so watching that with all the Latvian fans there, it was just so much fun.
Yeah, and they got some great goaltending. Arturs Silovs, I mean, he has been playing lights out, 40 saves in their upset of Sweden, outshot 41-15, and they still find a way to get the win.
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole tournament I think has been a lot of fun, and you just kind of take it for what it is. It's some players from the countries playing in the tournament. You have, some prospects in there. There's a few draft eligible prospects in the tournament. Fantilli has been playing for Team Canada. Again, some prospects like a Cutter Gauthier are in the tournament, and then there's some NHLers in there, as well as some top European players who you don't get to see very often. And so I think, if you're looking for some extra hockey, this is a great option. The semifinals are on Saturday, and then the medal games are on Sunday. And it's wild because either Germany or Latvia is definitely going to get a medal in
Right.
this tournament, which is so cool, I think.
I love it. Not the typical, not the same teams, same countries every time. So that's good.
No, not at all. All right, that will do it for today's show and for the week. Gil, you will be back on Monday, as always, talking to some of the other hosts from around the network about what's going on with their teams. I assume there's going to be some Stanley Cup Final related
Yes.
interviews for that.
You assume correctly.
All right. Thank you once again so much for listening to Locked On NHL here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great and safe holiday weekend for those of you in the just regular weekend everywhere else.